Deciding to retire is one of the biggest events that will ever happen in your life. So here's a simple checklist that you can go through a few months or a year before you retire so you can make the most out of your money and enjoy your hard-earned retirement. The first thing to check is your state pension entitlement. Ideally, you'd have done this a few years before you retire, but at the very least, you should do it now. So go to the government website, it's free. You can check how much pension you're going to be entitled to, when that pension is going to be paid, and you can see if there's any gaps in your national insurance record and how much it will cost to fill those so you can get your entitlement up to the full state pension. The second step is to get clear on what you own and what you owe. So write a simple checklist of assets and liabilities. So your liabilities will be your mortgage, whether or not you're going to pay that off before retirement. Are you going to carry that balance during retirement? Do you have any credit cards or car loans that are going to be owed, or any other debt that you're going to carry into retirement? Then on the next side, get clear of the assets that you've got. So pensions, ISAs, cash, investment properties, a business that might be sold. Make sure you're clear on both of these. You want to go into retirement knowing exactly what you have and where you have it, because even what wrapper you have it in will make a difference to how much tax you're going to have to pay on drawing it out, and every penny counts in retirement. So it's really key to have a clear picture of your net worth before you decide to retire. The next step is to focus on your pension. So locate all of your pensions. Ideally, you should know where they are, but if you've left it a bit late, locate any old paperwork, go through all your employment history to see if you had a pension or not with those. And if you think you might have had one, but you don't know where it is, you can go on the pension tracing service via the government. It's completely free, and that'll help you work out where your pension is. So now you've found your pensions, what do you need to check once you actually have them? Well, the first thing you need to do is get a current fund value or transfer value to work out how much is actually in your pension. Then you need to work out what investments are actually inside that pension. Is it taking enough risk, or is it taking too much risk for where you want to be? Whether the pension allows all the retirement options that you want to take. Not all pensions, particularly older style pensions, allow drawdown. So if you want to go into drawdown, you need to check that with your provider. And even some of those providers that do offer drawdown, not all of them offer a monthly regular drawdown, and that might be something that you want. So make sure you know exactly what your pension provider offers and whether it matches up to how you want to take your income. You also want to check whether you've got a final salary pension or a defined contribution pension. So a final salary pension is effectively a guaranteed form of income in retirement, where a lot of them will have early retirement penalties. So let's say the retirement date on the scheme is 65 and you want to retire at 60, then they might charge you a penalty to take that money 5 years early. So it's worth getting a quotation to work out what that will actually pay you and whether that's going to be enough, or if you need to draw on other assets to bridge the gap between when you retire and when those non-flexible pensions start paying in. You also need to check whether they have any guarantees. So that could be guaranteed annuity rates, guaranteed minimum pension, protected tax-free cash, or any other special features that apply to that pension before you transfer them away. Making sure you understand these things in advance can avoid any unnecessary delays on getting hold of your money before you retire. You don't want to quit your job, retire, and then to find out that your pension needs to be transferred to another provider before you can start taking income. That could be weeks or even months depending on the pension provider before you get your money, so do it in advance. The next thing to consider is to see what happens to your pensions and assets on death. If you have a final salary pension, there's a high likelihood that it won't pay 100% of it to your spouse in the event that you were to die. So make sure you understand the implications as to what would happen to you or your partner if one of you died, and is there actually enough assets there to provide that other person with an income? If not, you might want to consider some temporary life assurance, or you might need to factor in that if one of you dies, then there is going to need to be an adjustment to expenditures or perhaps moving home. But make sure you're clear as to what would happen if one of you were to pass away in the early years of retirement. And nobody likes to think about it, but believe me, it does happen, and it's devastating when it does, and it's even more devastating if you don't have a clear plan in place to make sure that other person can be looked after. You typically find in a lot of couples that one person will do all the financial planning, the admin, and the other person might not be so informed. And if that person dies, then it can really leave the other person in a distressing situation. So even if there's not much that can be done from a financial point, it's worth being clear on those numbers so that if something does happen, you're not adding extra stress to the person that's left behind by not being clear on the figures or where things are. Make sure that both partners, if you share your finances, are aware of where everything is, how it's invested, and what would to happen if someone were to die. The next thing to do, perhaps maybe a few months or even a year before you retire, meticulously track your spending and break it down into 3 categories. First one will be your base level, your essential expenditures. These are things that you're going to have to pay for no matter what happens in retirement. So your energy bills, your food bills, your council tax, your internet, all those sort of things that are going to have to be paid for, tally up how much they cost and put that as your essential expenditure category. The next level will be your discretionary spending, so meals out, occasional treats, things like that. Those are all things that are going to have to be paid for in retirement, but perhaps things that you can cut back on if markets get tough and you need to. And then the third category I'd categorize as luxury spending. Now, this is going to be a bit blurred between discretionary and luxury, and you can really work out what works best for you and your family. But add things in like big ticket items like luxury holidays, big trips away, weekends away, all those sort of things that are a bit more higher than the norm, because it might be that you have £2,000 a month of essential expenditures, £1,000 a month of discretionary expenditure, but you also want to do some big holidays throughout the year that add another £10,000 to £20,000 a year. It depends on your lifestyle, of course, but it's worth breaking them down so you know exactly what you need for what purpose in retirement. As you're going through these, make sure you review your expenditures to look out for things that are going to go up in retirement and things that are going to go down in retirement. So perhaps if you commute regularly to work, that expenditure is most likely going to go down, but of course you're going to have more free time on your hands, so you might join a golf club or do other things during the day that are going to increase your expenditure. So whilst you should track the past few months or year before you retire, also try and forecast what you're going to want to spend in retirement and what a day looks like, and then you can see how much money you're going to need to be able to fund that. And then you need to factor in taxes. If you say I need £2,000 a month in retirement, it might not be that you only need to withdraw £2,000 a month from your pension. You're going to need to factor some tax in for some people depending on how you withdraw it. So make sure you've factored in the tax to see actually what you need to take from your pension gross. Because if you need £2,000 a month, but you actually need to take out £2,500 a month, that'll make a big difference to what you're actually withdrawing from your pension, and therefore it's long-term sustainability. So be clear on how much you need in your pocket net, and depending on what assets you're going to take it from, how much that's going to cost you when you factor in tax. The next thing to consider is what you're actually going to do in retirement. Now, of course, not every day needs to be accounted for. You might just like the idea that you've taken your foot off the gas, you can have time to relax, and your time's yours rather than being your employer's. But it might be worth having some form of loose schedule as to what hobbies you're going to do, any volunteering, spending time with the grandkids. Perhaps you're just going to have a change of career, something that you're not really doing for the money, but something that you do just to enjoy yourself a little bit. But make sure you have some sort of schedule in retirement so that you can really make the most of those golden years, the early years of retirement when hopefully you've got a lot of assets, your health as well, and then you can really enjoy those years. Having a sense of purpose in retirement can make it much more fulfilling, because it is a huge change going from perhaps really needed in a demanding and stressful job to then not being needed in the commercial sense and having another purpose to aim for. So really think about that before you retire, because it's not just about the numbers. And that feeds back to our point that we said before. If it turns out in retirement you just want to go on lots of walks, have a relaxed lifestyle, you might suddenly take stock of all your assets and think, actually, you know what, I don't need that much money to retire. I could probably do it now. The next thing to do, either with a financial professional or if you're happy to do it yourself, is to do some broad projections as to how much money you need and how long that's going to last. So as we've looked at our expenditures, what we're actually going to spend, we know where our assets are, then we can say, right, based on investment assumptions, some inflation assumptions, add in some market crashes or volatility, and you can look at how long your money's actually going to last. So you know how much you can spend and you can be confident in that spending. So if you have a big pot of 500,000, £1,000,000, it's very hard sometimes to translate that into your brain as to what that actually means in income in retirement. So try and do some cash flow projections to see how long that will last, and you might be surprised that you can spend more, or you might realize that actually now's not the time and we need a couple of years more of really working to put some more money away before we can actually retire. And then on to retirement timing, the actual tax timing. If you're retiring towards the end of a tax year, it might be an opportune time to put some more money into your pension, make use of your relevant earned income for the last time so you can put a big chunk in. If you're retiring at the end of the tax year, you might not be able to take out any taxable income from your pension without causing yourself a tax liability. And on the other side of things, if you retire early into a tax year, then you might have a lot of your personal allowance remaining. So it's worth factoring that into your withdrawals. Rather than just taking all your tax-free cash, you might decide that you're going to take out some of your taxable income to use up whatever personal allowance you have left and to maintain some of that tax-free cash that you've got. I've got another video that talks about not just taking your 25% tax-free cash as soon as you retire. It might help you think about some ways to take your pension in the most tax-efficient way possible, as opposed to just drawing out that lump sum in retirement as soon as you're able to. It's not really financial, but it's the timing of when you retire. Are you going to retire into the winter or into the summer? A lot of times people retire into the winter, and if you're in the UK, the weather's not that great, and if you're not going on holiday, you might feel like, well, actually, I'd rather I just worked and earned a bit more money and retired into the spring. Now, it's not going to be the same for everyone, but it's something to think about. You might think, well, I'm going to retire in the spring, I'm going to work the winter, and all that money that I've earned throughout that winter time, I'm going to allocate towards a holiday or something to look forward to so that I retire in the spring, the weather's good, I've got a holiday to look forward to, and it makes the start of retirement feel a bit nicer. The last thing you could consider doing before you retire is to have a health check. See where your health markers are. Is there anything that you can do between now and retirement to make yourself healthier? Do you need to do more exercise? Are there other things that you need to get under control to reduce some of your stress levels perhaps? And to make sure that you go into retirement healthy. And if you aren't so healthy now, you can have a plan in place to say, well, when I have more time on my hands, I'm going to do these things to make sure that I not only enjoy my retirement more whilst I'm retired, but also can hopefully be retired for longer because I've looked after my health. So those are just a few things to think about. I'm sure there's many more. If you've got anything else that you'd like to put in the comments, then leave it below. I'd love to read it. And remember, retiring isn't just a financial decision, it's a life decision. So make sure you really think about it before you do it so you can make the most out of your golden years and enjoy your retirement.